I smelled them before I saw them. The bitter scent of city cologne mixing with dust from my driveway. I was knee-deep in my tomato patch when the black SUVs rolled up, wheels crushing the gravel I'd laid down last spring. 4 vehicles. 8 men in dark suits despite the summer heat. One of them was Commissioner Blake. My hand tightened around my trowel. 20 years in the military teaches you when trouble's coming. I stood slowly, my old knees cracking in protest. The rich soil fell from my overalls as I straightened up. They didn't look like tax collectors. But then again, the worst wolves rarely look like wolves. Mr. Roberts? The lead man stepped forward. Tall, thin, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I'm Agent Mercer from the State Resource Department. I didn't offer my hand, just nodded, aware of the sweat cooling on my neck. This about the water, rights again? Mercer glanced at Blake, who suddenly found my barn very interesting to look at. Couldn't even meet my eyes. That's when I knew this was bad. No, sir. I'm afraid it's more serious than that. Mercer pulled a thick envelope from his jacket. This property has been selected for the new regional development project. The state is exercising eminent domain. My stomach dropped to my boots. Eminent domain. Government speak for, we're taking your land, whether you like it or not. There must be some mistake. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. This farm has been in my family for 4 generations. No mistake, Mr. Roberts. Mercer handed me the envelope. You have 30 days to vacate the premises. The state is offering fair market value, of course. I looked down at the papers, not really seeing them. Behind Mercer, Blake still wouldn't look at me. Coward. He'd sat at my table just last month, eating my wife's apple pie, talking about his kids. Commissioner, I called out. You have anything to add here? Blake finally turned, his face a careful mask. It's out of my hands, Robert. The decision came from the state level. I nearly laughed. These men had no idea who they were dealing with. They saw an old farmer in dirty overalls. They didn't see Chief Roberts of the county police. I'd been on leave for my father's funeral, spending time working the land to clear my head. Tomorrow I'd be back in uniform. 30 days isn't much time to uproot a lifetime, I said, carefully folding the papers. Mind telling me what's so important about my particular plot of land? One of the younger agents spoke up. The whole area is being redeveloped. Your neighbors have already agreed to sell. That was a lie. I'd had coffee with Jim Baker just yesterday. He hadn't mentioned a word about selling his orchard. That right, I said, scanning their faces. Guess I need to catch up with the neighbors then. The paperwork explains everything, Mercer said, already backing toward his vehicle. A representative will be by next week to discuss the details of your relocation package. They left in a cloud of dust, leaving me standing in my field with dirt on my hands and theft disguised as paperwork. I watched until their taillights disappeared down the road before pulling out my phone. My deputy answered on the second ring. Chief, thought you were off till tomorrow. Collins, I said quietly, I need you to pull every permit application and land sale in the county for the last 6 months. And find out everything you can about something called the Regional Development Project. Sir, her voice dropped to a whisper. Does this have something to do with those state boys who came into the station last week asking for our property records? I felt the hairs on my neck stand up. What state boys? Said they were from the development office. Commissioner Blake brought them in himself, gave them access to everything. My eyes drifted to the family cemetery plot on the hill, where we just laid my father to rest beside my mother and grandparents. No way in hell was I letting them bulldoze that. Collins, keep this between us for now. And watch your back. I hung up and stared out at my land as the sun began to set. 200 acres that had fed my family for generations. Land I'd dreamed of while lying in desert sand halfway around the world. What did they really want with it? Whatever it was, they'd picked the wrong farmer to bully. Little did they know, tomorrow I'd be wearing a different kind of uniform. And Chief Roberts played by very different rules than Farmer Roberts. As darkness fell, I noticed headlights slowing near my property line. A car pulled over briefly, then sped away. Someone was watching my place. The game had already begun. The police station smelled like bad coffee and wet boots when I walked in the next morning. Officers straightened up when they saw me, some surprised, some nervous. Word travels fast in a small department. I was supposed to be on bereavement leave for another week. Chief's back, someone whispered as I made my way to my office. Deputy Collins was waiting, dark circles under her eyes suggesting she'd been up all night. She closed the door behind me. "You're not going to believe what I found," she said, spreading files across my desk. "In the last 4 months, 17 farms in the county have been bought or seized through eminent domain, all within a 10-mile radius of yours." I hung my uniform hat and sat down, the chair feeling strange after days of working the fields. Owners all get the same story about a regional development project? Yes, but here's the thing. There's no project registered with the State Development Office. I called a friend who works there. My blood ran cold. "So what are they building?" Collins slid a map toward me. Red circles marked the properties already acquired. Together, they formed a rough oval with my farm right in the middle. "Whatever it is, your land is the centerpiece," she said. "And there's more. The purchases are being made through different companies, but they all trace back to Horizon Holdings. Never heard of them, because they didn't exist until 6 months ago. But guess who sits on their board?" Collins passed me a printout. Edward Blake, the commissioner's brother. The pieces started clicking into place, and the commissioner brought state agents into our records room. "Looking for weak spots," Collins nodded. "Tax problems, lien issues, anything they could use." A knock interrupted us. Officer Ramirez poked his head in. "Chief, Commissioner Blake is here to see you." "Perfect timing," I muttered. "Send him in." Blake's surprise was visible for just a second when he saw me behind the desk in full uniform. He covered it quickly with a smile. "Robert, didn't expect you back so soon after your father's passing. My condolences again." "Thank you, Commissioner. Please have a seat." I motioned for Collins to stay as Blake sat down. "What brings you by this morning?" Blake glanced at the open files between us. "Just checking in, making sure the department's running smoothly." "Interesting you should mention that." I closed the folder with his brother's name. "We've had some unusual activity. State officials accessing county records, farms being seized. Almost like someone's planning something big without informing local law enforcement." His smile tightened. "Progress requires change, Chief. The county needs economic development." "Is that what this is?" "Because when men in suits show up at my farm mentioning eminent domain without a clear public purpose, it makes me curious." Blake's eyes darted to Collins, then back to me. "Your farm? I had no idea your property was included. I'll look into it immediately." The lie hung in the air between us. He'd been there yesterday, standing in my driveway. "You do that," I said evenly. "Because I'm looking into it too." Blake stood abruptly. "Don't make this personal, Robert. Some things are bigger than one man's farm. When you threaten a man's home, Commissioner, it's already personal." After he left, Collins turned to me. "He's scared." "Good." I picked up my phone. "Call Judge Harris. I want warrants for the Commissioner's phone records and Horizon Holdings financial statements." My cell phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Not all of us agreed to this plan. "Meet at Miller's Creek Bridge. 9 p.m. Come alone." Collins saw my expression change. "What is it?" I showed her the message. "Could be a trap. Or someone with a conscience," she said. "What are you going to do?" I stared at the text, thinking about my father's grave on that hill. About the neighbors who might be losing their homes too. First, I'm going to visit Jim Baker and the other farmers. Then tonight, I'm going to find out just how deep this corruption goes. The radio on my desk crackled to life. "All units. Disturbance reported at the Baker orchard. Multiple vehicles on scene." Collins and I locked eyes. "They're moving fast," she said. "Too fast." I grabbed my hat. "And that means they're desperate. Desperate people make mistakes." As we rushed toward the door, my phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. "They know you're chief of police. Watch your back." The tires of my police cruiser skidded on the gravel as I pulled into Jim Baker's orchard. 3 black SUVs were parked in a half circle around his front porch. Jim stood with his arms crossed, his wife Martha behind him, white-knuckled grip on the doorframe. The same suits from yesterday were waving papers in his face. I stepped out in full uniform, my badge catching the sunlight. Agent Mercer froze mid-sentence when he saw me. "Everything all right here, Jim?" I called out, walking slowly toward the group. Jim's weathered face broke into relief. Chief Roberts, these men say I agreed to sell my orchard. I never signed a damn thing. I reached the porch steps, Deputy Collins flanking my right side. Gentlemen, this is quite a coincidence. We just met yesterday at my farm. Mercer's confusion was plain as day. Your farm? You're the chief of police. 20 years military, 10 years law enforcement, I said, climbing the steps to stand beside Jim. Seems that wasn't in your file on me. The youngest agent whispered something to Mercer, who quickly tried to recover. This doesn't change anything, Chief Roberts. The state has authority here. Maybe so, I said, but harassment doesn't become legal just because you have papers. Now, why don't you tell me why Jim's signature appears on documents he never signed? Martha stepped forward, trembling but determined. They showed us a contract with Jim's name on it, but it's not his handwriting. We've owned this orchard for 35 years. I turned to Collins. Deputy, please take photos of all documents these gentlemen are presenting. To Mercer, I added, forgery is a serious crime in this county. One of the agents stepped back toward their vehicle. We don't have to stand for this. Actually, you do, I replied. This is now an active investigation into potential fraud. Nobody leaves until I've seen every piece of paper you're carrying. Mercer's jaw tightened. This could be considered obstruction of state business, Chief. And falsifying signatures could be considered felony fraud, Agent Mercer. Now your documents, please. The tension broke when Jim's son arrived in his pickup, jumping out with his phone already recording. The agents huddled briefly. Then Mercer handed over a thin folder. We'll be back with proper authorization, he warned. You do that, I said. In the meantime, any further attempts to contact Mr. Baker will go through the county police department. After they drove away, Jim collapsed into a porch chair. They've been calling for weeks, Robert. Then yesterday they showed up with papers saying I'd agreed to sell for half what this place is worth. I opened the folder. Inside was a sales agreement with Jim's apparent signature at the bottom. May I keep this? Our forensics team should look at it. Martha brought out lemonade as Jim nodded. Take it. I never signed that thing. Collins was already on her phone, snapping pictures of the neighboring properties. Chief, look at this. Every farm they're targeting borders the old mining access road. I studied where she was pointing. The road had been abandoned for years, but it cut through all our properties, connecting to the highway on one end and the old military storage facility on the other. What's at the old base now? I asked. Jim's son Tyler spoke up. Nothing much. Government still owns it. No trespassing signs everywhere. A memory clicked into place. Collins, get back to the station. Check if there's been any federal transfer of that military property. You think this is connected to the base? Jim asked. I watched dust rising from the departing SUVs. I think when someone forges documents to steal land, they're hiding something big. My phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number. Meeting changed. Come to the old fire tower now. They're moving faster than expected. Who keeps texting you? Martha asked, seeing my expression change. Hopefully an ally. I replied, not entirely convinced. Jim, lock your doors tonight. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. I'll post an officer nearby. As I walked back to my cruiser, Tyler followed me. Chief, there's something else. Last week I saw trucks going into the old base at night. Big ones, like they were moving heavy equipment. You sure about that? He nodded. I was hunting on the ridge. Saw the headlights through my scope. I climbed into my vehicle, mind racing. Keep this between us for now, Tyler. Back on a main road, I radioed Collins. Change of plans. Meet me at the old fire tower on Ridge Road. That's pretty isolated, Chief, she responded, concern in her voice. I know. Bring backup, but keep them out of sight. The fire tower stood on the highest point in the county. From there, you could see everything, including my farm, the old military base, and the winding path of the abandoned mining road. Someone had chosen this meeting spot carefully. As I drove, pieces started forming a picture I didn't like. Land grabs, forged documents, secret trucks, and an abandoned base. Commissioner Blake's brother's company. What could be valuable enough to risk so many laws to obtain? And why the hurry? The tower appeared through the trees as I rounded the final curve. No other vehicles in sight. I parked and checked my sidearm, a habit from my military days. Something felt wrong. The old wooden steps creaked under my weight as I climbed. At the top, the door to the observation deck stood ajar. I pushed it open slowly. A woman stood looking out over the valley, her back to me. When she turned, I recognized her immediately. Sarah Blake, the commissioner's wife. "Hello, Robert," she said quietly. "I'm sorry about involving you and your farm in this mess. But my husband and his friends have gone too far this time." Sarah Blake's hand shook as she handed me a flash drive. "Edward doesn't know I took this from his office," she said. "You need to see what they're planning." The observation deck of the fire tower gave us a perfect view of the entire valley. I could see my farm in the distance, and beyond it, the chain-link fence surrounding the old military base. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the land. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, pocketing the drive. "You're risking a lot." Sarah's eyes darted to the road below, checking for vehicles. "My family has lived here for generations, too, Robert." When Edward said they were bringing jobs to the county, I supported him. But this, she shook her head. People are being forced out of their homes. What exactly is this project? They're calling it the Clearwater Initiative. Officially, it's a water treatment and storage facility. She pointed toward the abandoned base. But that's not the whole truth. A flicker of movement caught my eye, a reflection in the trees about 100 yards south. Someone was watching us. I casually moved Sarah away from the window. "We're not alone." Her face paled. "We need to go. Now." I've already said too much. We hurried down the tower stairs. At the bottom, I saw Collins signaling from the tree line. Training kicked in, 3 quick hand gestures telling me 2 men were approaching from the east. "Get to your car," I told Sarah. "Drive straight to the station. Ask for Officer Ramirez. Tell him I said to put you in interview room 3 and wait for me. They'll know it was me," she whispered. "Not if we're careful. Go." As Sarah's sedan disappeared down the dirt road, I drew my weapon and moved toward Colin's position. She emerged from the trees, her own gun at the ready. 2 men with binoculars, she reported quietly. "They pulled up after you went into the tower. Get their plate number?" She nodded. "Already ran it. Rental car from the airport, picked up yesterday." We moved through the underbrush, circling behind where Collins had spotted the watchers. But when we reached the spot, all we found were cigarette butts and boot prints in the mud. "They left in a hurry," Collins observed, holstering her weapon. Back in my cruiser, I found a business card tucked under the windshield wiper. Plain white with just a phone number. I pocketed it without comment. "What did Sarah Blake give you?" Collins asked as we drove toward town. I patted my pocket. "Maybe answers. But first, I want to check something." Instead of heading back to the station, I turned onto the access road that led to the abandoned military base. The sun had nearly set, painting the sky blood red against the dark outline of the fence. "Chief, we don't have jurisdiction on federal property," Collins reminded me. "We're not going in. Just looking." I parked on a rise, overlooking the main gate. The place looked deserted. Rusted chain-link fence, faded no trespassing signs, overgrown parade grounds. But something was off. "The weeds," I said, pointing at tire tracks cutting through the tall grass. "Someone's been coming and going." Collins pulled out binoculars. "Back gate's been replaced. New chain, new lock. For an abandoned base nobody's using." My radio crackled. "Chief, this is Ramirez. Mrs. Blake never arrived at the station. Should I send someone to look for her?" A cold feeling settled in my stomach. 10 to 4. Start with the main road from Ridge Tower. I turned the cruiser around, gravel spraying as we accelerated back toward town. "Call Judge Harris again. I want those warrants tonight." "You think something happened to her?" Collins asked. "I think we're running out of time." At the station, I locked my office door and plugged the flash drive into my computer. Dozens of files appeared. Maps, contracts, geological surveys. A folder labeled Clearwater contained architectural plans for something massive built underground. "What the hell?" I mumbled, opening another file. The computer screen filled with a document on Department of Energy letterhead. The words Strategic Water Reserve and National Security jumped out, along with a project timeline showing construction beginning next month. A knock on my door made me jump. "Chief." It was Ramirez. We found Sarah Blake's car. The knot in my stomach tightened. Where? Bottom of Miller's Creek Ravine. Looks like she missed the curve. Paramedics are working on her now. I grab my keys. Tell them I'm on my way. And Ramirez, secure this office. Nobody comes in until I return. The accident scene was lit by emergency lights, casting eerie blue and red patterns through the trees. Sarah's car had plunged nearly 50 feet off the road, coming to rest upside down in the shallow creek. Paramedics were loading her into an ambulance as I arrived. How is she? I asked the nearest EMT. Unconscious. Possible head trauma. We're taking her to County General. I looked at the skid marks on the road. They started in the middle of a straight section, nowhere near the curve. This was no accident. As the ambulance pulled away, I noticed Commissioner Blake's car arriving. He rushed toward me, face contorted with worry. Robert, what happened? They said Sarah was in an accident. For a brief moment, his concern seemed genuine. She's on her way to County General. I told him. Paramedics are with her. He stared down at the wrecked car. What was she doing out here? I was hoping you could tell me, I said, watching his reaction carefully. Sarah and I had an interesting conversation today about the Clearwater Initiative. Blake's expression shifted so slightly most people would have missed it, but I'd interrogated enough suspects to recognize fear when I saw it. I don't know what you're talking about, he said, already backing toward his car. I need to get to the hospital. Of course, I replied. And Commissioner? The flash drive she gave me is already somewhere safe. His face went pale before he turned and hurried away. Collins joined me at the guardrail. Brake lines were cut, she said quietly. Found a leak at the top of the hill. I watched Blake's taillights disappear around the bend. Get officers to the hospital. Nobody sees Sarah without our authorization. You think the commissioner would hurt his own wife? I pulled out my phone and dialed Judge Harris's personal number. I think we just declared war on people who've already proven they'll do anything to get what they want. As I waited for the judge to answer, my phone buzzed with a text. It was the mysterious number again. Check the water table surveys. It's not about the base. It's about what's underneath it. Harris here, came the judge's voice. Your Honor, I need those warrants immediately. And one more thing, I need authorization to access the old military base. Tonight. The old military base looked haunted in the moonlight. I cut the headlights as we approached, rolling slowly down the access road. Judge Harris had come through with emergency warrants, including permission to enter the supposedly abandoned federal property. Collins drove while I studied satellite images on my tablet. Stop here, I whispered, spotting movement near the main gate. 2 guards with flashlights patrolled the perimeter fence. So much for abandoned, Collins muttered. We backed up and parked behind a ridge, continuing on foot through the woods. Years of military training made moving silently second nature. The fence was old, but recently repaired in sections. We found a spot where the moonlight wouldn't expose us and used wire cutters to create an opening. Inside, the base was a strange mix of decay and fresh activity. Weeds grew through cracked concrete, but fresh tire tracks cut through them. The main administration building stood dark, but a warehouse at the far end showed signs of life. Generator hummed and faint light seeping through covered windows. There, I pointed. Let's check it out. We stuck to the shadows, passing rusted equipment and empty barracks. At the warehouse, I peered through a gap in the blackout curtains covering a window. The sight inside made my blood run cold. A large room had been converted into a command center. Maps covered one wall, detailed layouts of the county, with every farm in our area highlighted in red. My property sat in the center, marked with a star. Computer equipment lined another wall, monitoring what looked like geological data. Men in suits huddled around a table examining blueprints. What do you see? Collins whispered. Before I could answer, a voice behind us said, Police. Don't move. We spun around to find 2 security guards, weapons drawn. Not local cops, private security. Their patches read Horizon Security. Easy, I said, slowly raising my badge. Chief Roberts, County Police. We have a warrant to inspect this facility. The guards looked uncertain. One reached for his radio, but the other stopped him. The director will want to handle this personally, he said. To us. Hand where we can see them. You'll come with us. They escorted us inside, where the suited men scattered like cockroaches in light, gathering papers and closing laptop screens. A tall man with silver hair broke away from the group. I recognized him immediately. Senator William Price, head of the State Infrastructure Committee. What is the meaning of this intrusion? He demanded. I handed him the warrant. We're investigating multiple reports of fraud and coercion related to land acquisitions in this county. Judge Harris signed this an hour ago. The senator barely glanced at the paper. This facility falls under national security protocols. Your local warrant holds no weight here. Actually, Senator, this warrant was countersigned by a federal judge. I pointed to the second signature. And I'm curious why a state senator is present at a closed federal facility at midnight. A flash of anger crossed his face before his political mask slipped back on. Chief Roberts, isn't it? I understand your property is among those selected for the Clearwater Initiative. Perhaps we could discuss this privately? I think we're past private discussions, Senator, especially after Sarah Blake's accident tonight. His eyebrow raised slightly. Accident. Someone cut her brake lines after she met with me, after she gave me the files explaining what you're really building here. The senator's face hardened. A shame about Mrs. Blake. I'm sure the commissioner is devastated. He signaled to someone behind us. Chief Roberts, let me be direct. This project is vital to national security. The water reserves beneath this valley are among the largest untapped aquifers in the nation. So this is about water rights? Collins asked. This is about survival, the senator snapped. Climate models show catastrophic drought conditions within 5 years. The government is securing water resources before private entities can claim them. By stealing people's homes? Forging documents. I countered. By making necessary sacrifices for the greater good, he replied coldly. Now, I suggest you leave before. The lights suddenly cut out, plunging us into darkness. Emergency generators kicked, and seconds later, bathing the room in red light. A security guard burst through the door. Sir, we have a breach at the north fence. Multiple vehicles approaching. The senator turned to an aide. Initiate Protocol 7. Secure all files. To us, it seems our conversation is over. As chaos erupted around us, I grabbed Colin's arm and pulled her toward a side door. Now's our chance. Get what you can. We slipped into an adjacent office while security rushed toward the disturbance. Collins quickly photographed maps and documents with her phone while I downloaded files from an unlocked computer. Chief, look at this, she said, holding up a document. List of properties and price points. They've been planning this for years. A familiar name caught my eye on the screen, Deputy Thomas Lane, listed as asset with payment amounts next to dates going back 18 months. They've got people inside our department, I said grimly. Shouting outside the door told us time was running out. We found a window and slipped outside just as flashlight beams swept the office we'd vacated. Running low through the darkness, we made it back to our entry point in the fence. As we squeezed through, headlights swept the area. We dropped flat as a convoy of black SUVs rolled past, heading for the main gate. Those aren't government vehicles, Collins whispered. No markings. When the vehicles parked, men in tactical gear poured out. Not military, not police, something else. They moved with precision toward the warehouse. Private contractors, I realized. But whose? A gunshot cracked the night, then another. Within seconds, the sound of automatic fire filled the air. We need to go. Now, I said, pulling Collins toward our hidden cruiser. As we drove away, the base behind us erupted in gunfire and shouting. Whatever was happening, one thing was clear. We weren't the only ones interested in the Clearwater Initiative. Back on the main road, Collins finally spoke. What just happened? I gripped the steering wheel tightly. War for water. The government versus someone with enough money to hire private soldiers. What do we do now? My phone buzzed with a text. Hospital. Sarah Blake is awake. Room 312. First, I said, we find out exactly what Sarah knows. Then we warn the others. As we sped toward County General, I couldn't shake the image of my farm marked with a star on their map. Not just land to be taken, a priority target. Sarah Blake's hospital room was guarded by two of my officers. They straightened when I approached, looking nervous. Any visitors? I asked. Commissioner Blake stayed about an hour. Officer Rodriguez reported. Left 20 minutes ago. Said he was in the cafeteria. I nodded. Stay alert. Nobody else enters without my approval. Inside, Sarah lay connected to monitors, a bandage wrapped around her head. Her eyes fluttered open when the door closed behind us. Robert, she whispered. They know I talked to you. I pulled a chair close to her bed. Who knows, Sarah? Your husband. She shook her head slightly, wincing at the movement. Not just Edward. The others. Senator Price called him while I was in the car. Before your accident? Collins asked gently. It wasn't an accident. Sarah's voice strengthened with anger. Edward stepped out to take the call. When he came back, he looked different. Said he needed to run an errand. 20 minutes later, he was gone, and I decided to meet you. Did you check your car before driving? I asked. No, I was in a hurry. Her fingers clutched the blanket. Someone was in the garage. I heard a noise, but thought it was the neighbor's cat. My jaw tightened. Sarah, what do you know about the Clearwater Initiative? It started as a legitimate water conservation project, she explained. Edward was proud of bringing it to our county. But then Senator Price got involved, and everything changed. She lowered her voice. The water under our valley isn't just abundant, it's pure. No PFAS contamination, no industrial chemicals. Clean water is valuable, Collins noted. But valuable enough for all this? Sarah's eyes met mine. The military tests from the 80s showed something else. The water has unusual properties. Something about its molecular structure makes it ideal for certain applications. Pharmaceutical manufacturing, advanced computer cooling systems, space program uses. They're stealing land for water exports? I asked incredulously. Not exports. Control. Sarah's monitor beeped as her heart rate increased. Whoever controls this water resource controls the next generation of technology development. That's worth trillions. A noise in the hallway made us all turn. Through the small window in the door, I caught a glimpse of Commissioner Blake arguing with my officers. He's back, I said. Sarah, we need to move you somewhere safe. There's more you need to know, she insisted, gripping my wrist with surprising strength. The project has split into factions. Government officials, private investors, even foreign interests. Edward is caught in the middle, taking money from all sides. That explains the firefight at the base tonight, Collins said. Sarah's eyes widened. It's starting already? Then we're out of time. The door burst open. Commissioner Blake stood there, two men in suits behind him. Not my officers. That's enough, Sarah, he said coldly. Chief Roberts was just leaving. I stood slowly. Actually, Commissioner, I'm placing you under arrest for attempted murder. One of the suits stepped forward, flashing a badge. Federal agents, Chief. The commissioner is assisting in a national security investigation. Your interference ends now. I didn't recognize the badge design. Which agency? Classified, the man replied. This hospital room is now restricted. You need to leave. Collins positioned herself between them and Sarah's bed. We have a witness to protect. Commissioner Blake looked genuinely pained. Robert, please. You don't understand what's at stake. I understand cutting brake lines, I replied. I understand forging signatures to steal people's homes. It's bigger than a few farms. Blake exploded. We're talking about national security. Whose nation? Sarah asked from her bed. Because it looks like you're selling to the highest bidder. Blake's face reddened. You don't know anything. I know about the offshore accounts, she said quietly. I know about your meetings with the Chinese investors. The federal agents exchanged glances. One touched his earpiece, listening to something. Commissioner Blake, he said carefully, we should continue this conversation elsewhere. Understanding dawned on me. You're not federal agents. At least, not all working for the same people. The hospital PA system suddenly crackled to life. Code Silver, first floor. Code Silver, first floor. Armed intruder alert. The momentary distraction was all we needed. I drew my weapon while Collins pulled Sarah's four-pole aside. Nobody moves, I ordered. Face down, hand behind your backs. Now. Instead, One suit reached inside his jacket. I fired a warning shot into the ceiling, plaster dust raining down. Next one won't miss, I promised. Alarms blared as hospital security protocols activated. The commissioner looked panicked. "You're making a terrible mistake, Robert," he pleaded. "These people won't stop." "Neither will I replied. "Down, now." As they reluctantly complied, Collins secured their weapons. Very real guns with very real silencers attached. "Not standard issue for federal agents," she observed. My phone rang. Ramirez. "Chief, armed men just enter the hospital. Not local. Professional gear. Secure all exits," I ordered. "Nobody leaves, especially not the commissioner or his friends." I turned to Sarah. "Can you walk?" She was already pulling off monitoring wires. "Get me out of here." Collins helped her stand while I kept my weapon trained on the men on the floor. "We're taking the service elevator to the basement garage," I told her. "Ramirez will meet us there." As Sarah leaned on Collins, she fixed her husband with a look of pure disgust. "All those years, Edward, all those promises about helping people. Was any of it real?" The commissioner stared at the floor. "I did it for us, Sarah. For our future. There is no us anymore," she whispered. In the hallway, chaos reigned as staff implemented lockdown procedures. We hurried toward the service area, Sarah moving remarkably well for someone who'd been in a car crash hours earlier. The service elevator was empty. As the doors closed, gunshots echoed from the main corridor. "They're not even trying to hide it anymore," Collins said. When we reached the basement, Ramirez was waiting with a patrol car, engine running. "The situation's deteriorating fast, Chief," he reported. "Armed men at all entrances. They're not local law enforcement. Get Mrs. Blake to the safe house," I instructed. "No radio communication, no phones. Off the grid." "What about you?" Collins asked as she helped Sarah into the car. I checked my weapon. "I'm going to warn the other farmers. Starting with Jim Baker." "You'll need backup," Collins insisted. "Too dangerous." "I need with Sarah." I handed her the flash drive from my pocket. "Get this to Judge Harris. Tell him everything." As they drove away, I took a deep breath and called Deputy Lane's number. He answered immediately. "Chief, where are you? Everyone's looking for you." "I know they are, Thomas," I said quietly. "Including you. How much did they pay you to betray your badge?" Silence then. "Chief, I don't know what you're—" "Save it. I saw the payment records. Just answer one question. Are they planning to move on the farms tonight?" Another pause. "Dawn operation. 6 properties simultaneously. Your farm is primary target." My free hand clenched into a fist. "Why tell me this now?" "Because they changed the orders an hour ago," he replied, voice dropping. "It's not eviction anymore. It's secure by any means necessary. They're bringing in contractors with military gear." The implication was clear. "Thanks for the warning," I said, surprisingly calm despite the rage building inside me. "Chief," Lane added, "I'm sorry. It started small, just information. I never thought it would go this far." I ended the call without responding. Dawn was 3 hours away. 3 hours to warn everyone, to prepare some kind of defense against forces with superior numbers and firepower. As I climbed into my personal truck, parked in the far corner of the garage, I made another call, this time to an old military buddy who owed me a favor. A very big favor. "Mike, it's Roberts. Remember that worst-case scenario we talked about? It's happening. Tonight." Blood-red sunrise painted the eastern sky as I crouched in the tree line overlooking my farm. The land had never looked more beautiful or more worth fighting for. My father's voice echoed in my memory. "This soil doesn't just grow crops, son. It grows legacy." Through binoculars, I counted 6 black SUVs approaching from the county road, moving slowly with headlights off. Behind me, 20 farmers and veterans waited silently, spread through the woods. Jim Baker nodded grimly from his position, shotgun resting across his knees. "Not for violence, for defense. Remember," I whispered into my radio, "no one fires unless fired upon. This is about standing our ground, not starting a war." My phone vibrated. Mike had arrived with his team at the rendezvous point. Former Special Forces operators, men and women who'd served with me overseas, now working private security. They weren't here as mercenaries, but as friends honoring the bond forged in combat. The SUVs stopped at my gate. Men in tactical gear poured out, carrying military-grade weapons. No police markings, no government insignia. This wasn't law enforcement, it was invasion force. A familiar figure stepped from the lead vehicle. Commissioner Blake, looking haggard in yesterday's rumpled suit. Through the binoculars, I could see dark circles under his eyes and a haunted expression. A man caught between forces he could no longer control. "Move in. Secure the house and outbuildings," ordered a tall man beside Blake. "Remember, we need the land uncontaminated. Watch your fire." I picked up my radio. "All positions hold. Wait for my signal." The tactical team spread out, approaching my farmhouse with practiced precision. They checked windows, tested doors, finding the place empty. Their commander gestured toward the barn. The moment they moved from the house, I clicked my radio twice. Floodlights blazed to life, bathing the entire yard in brilliant white light. The intruders froze, momentarily blinded. I stood and stepped from the tree line, police uniform gleaming in the sudden brightness. Behind me, farmers emerged from cover all around the property. Not just the neighbors, dozens of community members forming a human chain around my land. "This is Chief Roberts," my voice boomed through a bullhorn. "You are trespassing on private property. Drop your weapons and put your hands in the air." The tactical team swung their weapons up, but their commander hesitated, seeing they were surrounded. Not just by farmers, but by Mike's professionals who had silently moved into position behind them. "Stand down." The commander ordered his men. "We have a situation." Commissioner Blake looked like he might collapse. "Robert, please. You don't understand what forces you're dealing with." "I understand plenty," I replied, approaching slowly, "including federal law regarding armed trespass, conspiracy, and attempted seizure of private property." A black helicopter appeared above the tree line, rotors thumping the morning air. The tactical team visibly relaxed, expecting reinforcement. "Your ride's not coming," I said, nodding toward Mike. On cue, two of Mike's team emerged from the barn, escorting 3 zip-tied men in flight suits. Pilots decided not to join the party. Mike called out. The helicopter circled once, then retreated. "You're making a catastrophic mistake," the tactical commander said, but I noticed he'd subtly signaled his men to lower their weapons. "The mistake was thinking you could steal people's homes without consequence," I replied. Behind me, vehicles approached, not the reinforcements these men expected, but news vans. Lots of them. "What's this?" Blake asked, panic rising in his voice. "Transparency," I answered. "Collins contacted every media outlet in the state last night, plus a few national ones. Sheriff trucks appeared next, followed by state police cruisers. Not corrupt local officials, the real law, responding to real crimes." The tactical commander pulled Blake aside, whispering furiously. Blake's face drained of color. "Chief Roberts," Blake called out, voice shaking. "Perhaps we could discuss this privately before things escalate further." I shook my head. No more private deals. No more secrets. As news cameras began rolling, capturing armed men trespassing on a local farm, the tactical team commander made a decision. He slowly placed his weapon on the ground, signaling his men to do the same. "This operation is compromised," he announced. "We're standing down under protest." Sheriff's deputies moved in, securing weapons and reading rights. I approached Blake, who looked utterly defeated. "Edward Blake, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and attempted murder of your wife." As I handcuffed him, Blake whispered, "They'll bury this, Robert. The water resource is too valuable. They'll find another way." "Maybe," I acknowledged, "but not today, and not on our land." Jim Baker approached, watching as the invaders were loaded into police vehicles. "Is it over, Chief?" I looked across my farm, where the morning light, now, painted everything in gold. "Phase 1 is over. Phase 2 is making sure justice is served." My phone buzzed with a text from Collins. "Sarah is safe. Court order granted. All seizure notices officially suspended pending investigation." As I showed Jim the message, reporters surrounded us, cameras flashing, questions flying. The story was breaking wide open, impossible to bury now. In that moment, standing on soil that had belonged to my family for generations, I felt my father's presence. This wasn't just about winning a battle. It was about exposing a truth that had nearly been washed away. Chief Roberts, a reporter called out. How did you know they were coming? I looked directly into the cameras, knowing my words would reach far beyond our small county. Because in America, when corruption tries to take what isn't theirs, eventually someone stands up and says no more. Today, that someone was all of us. Behind a reporter, I noticed Senator Price watching from a distant hill, surrounded by suited men. This fight was far from over. But for the first time since those black SUVs had rolled up my driveway, I believed we might actually win. The courthouse steps were packed with people and pressed 3 months later. Summer heat shimmered off the pavement as I adjusted my tie, uncomfortable in the formal uniform I rarely wore. Collins stood beside me in her dress blues, newly promoted to captain after I'd announced my retirement. Ready for this? She asked quietly. As ready as I'll ever be, I replied, watching the crowd grow larger by the minute. Inside, the largest corruption case in state history was concluding its preliminary hearings. Commissioner Blake had taken a plea deal, turning state's evidence against Senator Price and a network of officials and investors that stretched from local government all the way to foreign corporations. Sarah Blake stood at the edge of the crowd, still using a cane, but looking stronger than she had in the hospital. She'd become the unexpected face of the resistance, her testimony breaking open the case when federal authorities initially tried to bury it under national security claims. Judge Harris emerged from the courthouse, followed by a procession of lawyers and officials. The crowd hushed as he approached the microphones. Today, this court has reviewed evidence of what can only be described as a conspiracy against the citizens of this county, he began. The attempt to illegally seize private property for the Clearwater Initiative has been permanently halted. Cheers erupted from the farmers and families who'd nearly lost everything. Jim Baker pumped his fist in the air, his wife wiping away tears beside him. Furthermore, Judge Harris continued when the noise subsided, the court has issued an injunction against any similar projects without full environmental impact studies and public hearings. The aquifer beneath our county will remain protected as a natural resource belonging to all citizens, not private or government interests. More applause, but I noticed several suited men slipping away from the edges of the crowd. This victory, while significant, wouldn't stop the powerful forces that had coveted our water. They would regroup, find another approach. Finally, the judge said, "This court wishes to recognize Chief Robert Roberts, whose courage and dedication to justice exposed this corruption at great personal risk." All eyes turned to me. I nodded acknowledgement, but didn't speak. This wasn't about one person. It had taken our entire community standing together. As the formal proceedings ended, reporters swarmed around us. I answered questions briefly, emphasizing the community effort over my own role. When asked about my retirement, I simply said it was time for new leadership. What I didn't mention was the night visit I'd received from unnamed government officials, suggesting my continued interference could have national security implications. The threat had been polite but unmistakable. Sarah made her way through the crowd to my side. "Not enjoying your moment of victory, Chief?" "It's not victory yet," I said quietly. "Just a battle won." She nodded, understanding. Edward's testimony named 3 foreign governments and 6 multinational corporations involved in the water scheme. This goes higher than anyone imagined, which is why I'm worried. I admitted, people with that kind of power don't just walk away. As if summoned by my words, a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. The back door opened, and a woman in an impeccable suit emerged. I recognized her immediately from news coverage. The new Secretary of Interior, appointed after the scandal, forced her predecessor's resignation. She walked directly toward us, Secret Service agents creating a path through the startled crowd. "Chief Roberts," she greeted me, extending her hand. I was hoping we might have a word. Collins tensed beside me, but I shook the offered hand. "Madam Secretary." "Quite a surprise." "I imagine it is," she replied with a practiced smile. "Perhaps somewhere more private?" We moved to a quiet corner of the courthouse garden. The secretary dismissed her security detail with a gesture, though they remained watchfully at a distance. "I'll be direct, Chief Roberts," she said once we were alone. "Your actions have created quite a situation for the administration." "The situation was created by corruption, not by those who exposed it," I countered. She inclined her head slightly. "Fair point, which is why I'm here personally. The president has authorized me to offer you a position. Of all the things I'd expected, this wasn't one of them." "What kind of position?" "Special advisor on resource protection," she said. "Working directly with my office to develop transparent policies for managing critical natural resources like your aquifer." I studied her face, looking for the trap. "Why me?" "Because sometimes the best way to fix a broken system is to bring in the person who exposed the cracks." She handed me a card with a private number. "The administration needs people who can't be bought, Chief Roberts. Think about it." As she walked away, Collins rejoined me. "What was that about?" I showed her the card. "Either a genuine opportunity or a clever way to neutralize a problem." "Which do you think it is?" she asked. "I'm not sure yet," I admitted. "But I know one thing. I can watch more closely from the inside than from my porch." That evening, I walked my fields as the sun set, thinking about everything that had happened since those first black SUVs had rolled up my driveway. My father had always said farming was about faith in the soil, in the seasons, in the future. Leading was no different. My phone rang. Jim Baker calling with news that the farmers were forming a water conservation cooperative, ensuring collective protection of the aquifer. Another call came from Mike, warning me about suspicious activity near the old military base despite the court orders. The battle might be won, but the war continued. Some fights couldn't be finished in a single season. Sarah Blake's car appeared on my driveway, dust billowing behind it. She got out carrying a thick folder. "Edward's contact reached out," she said without preamble. "These documents show the next phase of their plan, lobbying for new federal regulations that would override local control of water resources." I took the folder, thinking about the secretary's offer. From a porch, I could see the family cemetery where generations of my family rested. What would they do? The answer came clearly: protect the land by any means necessary. "I'm going to take the position," I decided, "but not for the reasons they think." Sarah smiled for the first time in months. "Fighting from within? Someone needs to make sure this never happens again, here or anywhere else." As darkness fell over my farm, I made one last call to Collins, my most trusted ally. "I need you to keep watching things here while I'm in Washington," I told her. "This isn't over." "Never thought it was, Chief," she replied. "So what's the plan?" I looked out over the land my family had tended for generations, land that had nearly been stolen by greed disguised as progress. Land worth fighting for. "The plan is simple," I said. "We protect what's ours, not just the farms, but the truth." In the distance, lights appeared on the road, more news vans arriving, hungry for updates on the scandal that continued to grow. The story wasn't ending. In many ways, it was just beginning. Some battles are fought with weapons. Others are fought with courage and conviction. The most important ones are fought with truth. And as I prepared to take this fight to its source, I knew one thing for certain. Truth, like water, always finds a way to break through.